Good evening and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Perry.
And I'm your host, David. Tonight we're talking about the Star Trek Voyager Season 1 episode Learning Curve, which is also the last episode of Season 1. We're calling this episode 15 if you consider the pilot a two-part kind of one episode. So it's considered episode 16 according to certain counts. We're calling it episode 15 in our count. But it is the last episode of Season 1. Before we continue, you can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as The Fire Caves, a Star Trek podcast.
That is correct, and that is a lot, and that is what you should do when you're trying to find us and follow us. And if you have any questions or concerns, you should direct them to us via one of those platforms as well. We'd love to hear from you. Now, of course, don't be alarmed if this seems like it's sudden that we're on learning curve. Please remember that our last episode, we covered 2 episodes in one. So you have a nice long one if you're just interested in something to listen to, if you got a long drive ahead of you, or, maybe you find our voices comforting when you're trying to sleep. You just put it on and listen to us before, of course, it's interrupted by the various commercials and ads that YouTube loves to throw into everything. So as David said, tonight we are talking about the episode Learning Curve. It's an interesting episode as it regards the way that we view crew interactions, and also the introduction and a little bit of an explanation about some new technology that we see used for the very first time in Star Trek as well. So we're going to get into that and several other things while we talk about this episode. But before we do all that, David, how has your week been?
Week's been good. Finished reading The Hobbit this week. I think this is the third time I've read it. It's been a while since I've read the last time, but fun reading it again. It's a great little classic story for anyone who's read Lord of the Rings. I'm sure you read The Hobbit as well. I'm kind of reading Lord of the Rings again here shortly. My sister is reading The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings for the first time, so she was like, "Hey, I'm reading it," and I was like, "I'll join you." But in between reading The Hobbit and the Fellowship of the Ring, I am gonna read book 2 of the Children of
Blood and Bone.
Bone, which is called The Children of Virtue and Vengeance. I'd already bought the book, even though you said you haven't really read book 1. I already bought book 2, so I figured I'd go ahead and give it a go. It's more of the same so far. I mean, I only just started it. Again, I don't think the author is... I mean, she has a lot of praise, a lot of blurbs about the book. I'm not saying the book is like terrible or anything. It's a young adult book. It's meant for young adults, and so the writing style is very.
So again, to give a little bit of a backstory there, just in case you're not aware, David and I like to read a lot of books. We have been working our way through several different types of books and series and things like that. And the most recent one that we completed was the James S.A. Corey series, Expanse. We're both big fans of both the book series and the show. The show's really what got us into reading it. So we did that and then began looking for other things in a similar vein to read. Mm-hmm. That book series, The Children of Blood and Bone, and the others in that series were recommended to me as another sci-fi series to get into. I tried to read the first one and really was not enjoying it. I'm not a completionist by any means. So if I don't enjoy something, I stop. And that's pretty much what happened to me here. David had already started reading it and had gotten farther along, so he went ahead and finished it. He also had a second book, but as he's saying, it's a bit more of the same. I will agree with what you said. I'm not necessarily saying that it's a bad book. I'm just saying that it's not one for me. This may be something that's right up other people's alley. It does have a lot of positive reviews, some critical acclaim. There's even been talks about them doing either a movie or a show about it. I forget which one.
Chiwetel Ejiofor is going to be playing the villain, King Saran. Looks like so.
So they're already in production. They're already looking at casting, and
that's already. I think.
So then they're. But it's just in reading the book, it's not for me. Now, the movie, as we know, movies often differ from the books. We don't know how closely they're going to be paying attention to it. Sometimes it's a good departure. Sometimes it's not. So this may be one of those that I'm not necessarily going to rush to the movie theater to see, but I may wait for it to come out on a streaming platform of some kind or something like that and check it out
So
that.
just for fun, here on Wikipedia's page, it says that they filmed the film between February of 2005 and June 2nd of 2025. So literally a year ago, they were wrapping up production, and apparently
Okay.
it's supposed to premiere in January of next year. So pretty soon we should be seeing
That's
some trailers
and
for
that's actually
that
pretty
series.
fast because I know that the book series itself has not been out for that long,
That's
you
true.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually pretty fast on them moving on um, a new book of any kind that I've ever
Right.
heard of, I've ever seen, and especially on a writer that doesn't have that kind of history. As far as I understand it, the author of these books, they may have written other little things here and there. But this was their first major foray into novelization and the sci-fi world and all that other kind of stuff. So a
Correct.
lot of fast moving firsts here. Again, not knocking. I'm just saying not my cup of tea. I'm going to wait to see how this pans out. But if you have any interest at all, at least look up the books, get like a synopsis. That might be something that you're interested in, and go from there. I just
Right.
know that I am not going to go any further in that particular series.
I have been reading the Iliad. I have a little bit left to go in the Iliad. It's 24 books, which are basically just chapters. But
Mhm.
these chapters are like anywhere from 20 to 30 pages long, so they're not quick little chapters. But um, it's been a very interesting experience. It's not something I've ever read before. I've never read the Iliad before. I'm reading it more to read the Odyssey because the movie comes
Mhm.
out. And it's just a very curious story because the whole thing is about how the Trojan War is this glorious slash terrible thing that
Yeah,
happened, and the gods are petty, but they're to be honored and worshipped. It's just very curious. Basically what I'm getting at is that I'm not sure exactly where Homer himself falls in terms of the story. Is he for
so
Achilles? Is he for the gods? Is he like
so when
critiquing them all? Yeah, go ahead.
I read this a long time ago. I read the Iliad and the Odyssey a long time ago. I was in high school actually when we went through both of them, and from my understanding, or at least the way it was taught to me, was we viewed the Iliad as more like an historical accounting of what
Right,
happened. There
right,
wasn't this whole like drama and lead up or whatever. The story, the drama, actiony stuff that you really like to hear, and where the compelling bits was the Odyssey. The
right,
Iliad was just kind of like giving you lore, right?
right,
Setting the stage, giving you background of what's what and who the key players are and what gods are on whose side and all that other kind of stuff. But it
right,
wasn't in any way kind of that gripping drama. So maybe that's part of the disconnect that you're having with some of the Iliad. Maybe if you think about it that way, that might help you out because that's how it was taught to me. Was think of the Iliad as they're setting the stage for things and to know
right.
why these people are important. Then you get the Odyssey, and it's the story, Odysseus, and there's where your uh, meat and potatoes really is.
Right.
So, but I always enjoyed that kind of, just that world build, I guess, because it's not something that we ever really, I guess we've moved on from. We see a lot of
Yeah.
medieval stuff, but
Hmm.
to look at like ancient Earth things has always been intriguing to me. So I've always enjoyed when those bits come up, but it's just kind of rare unless
Right.
we do talk about the Iliad or the Odyssey.
Right. Yeah, I've enjoyed it. It's just been a very curious experience. I won't go into too much more here because it would take me. I could give a whole episode of us talking about the Iliad just to
Yeah,
talk about all the
and we're
details.
talking about the future
So
here.
long.
We're not doing ancient history. We're
Exactly.
doing we're doing hopefully future history.
Right. And before I move on, I just want to quickly say I rewatched the Hobbit movies, which I don't know if I've ever watched the Hobbit movies since they came out in the theaters because I remember being disappointed with them. I think the
Yeah.
I think the first one's actually decent. I mean, the problem with the movies is they embellished too much. They had such success with the Lord of the Rings, which compared to the books is actually toned down because they had so much content to work through that they toned it down.
Mhm.
But the Hobbit was the opposite problem. They had one book but they wanted to make a trilogy out of it, so they filled it up with a bunch of extra stuff. Anything from Gandalf, any Gandalf-related content is absolutely stellar. All of the Gandalf scenes, from him going to fight Sauron, known as the Necromancer, to what he says to Bilbo during the journey, all of it's fantastic. But Legolas showing up is a mistake. The elf chick and her love plot line with one of the dwarves is absolutely god awful. It makes you want to choke every time it comes on screen. But the dragon is great. Smaug the dragon. All of that stuff is really fun. So I appreciated rewatching the movies than I remember liking them the first time. And then last night I watched the movie Nuremberg, which is the movie about the Nuremberg trials with Russell Crowe playing Hermann Göring. It was just it was good. It was like, you wonder how much they had to kind of like embellish the story because it's kind of a dry sort of subject, but apparently, the main bits are all true. Like the Rami Malek plays the psychiatrist guy who was sent to go like evaluate the Nazis. They're going up for trial. How much are they ready to go on trial? So it was good. I don't think it was a perfect film, but it was pretty like an A-. I give it an A-. So yeah, enjoyed that. But yeah, what's up with you? What's up with your week?
Well, real quick, last thing I only want to say about the Hobbit movies is I always felt like those were movies that this was to justify a CGI budget. Because I feel like those movies went hardcore overboard with the CGI special effects stuff.
And I think that's what really detracts. Was so good was because they didn't do that too much.
Well, I think that's what always got me, because it's like I felt like there was a lot of meticulous detail put into the Lord of the Rings movies, and so then when Peter Jackson came back, they were like, "We want bigger, we want more," and he didn't really necessarily have a way to do that. So he said, "I know." Special effects, and they just blew the load on that, and I just never really appreciated that about this movie. So it's just like, I agree with what you said. The Gandalf scenes are great, but there's so much overly done CGI stuff that it can be really distracting in those movies. So that's all I want to say there. As for my overall week, as you know, we've been trying to do these workouts together, but I swear, man, the weather has kept us from really being able to lock in the way that I would like us to. I swear we'll get one day where we can do a really good workout, and then it will rain the next like 2-3 days. And I'm not talking like just a little bit of a, sprinkling or whatever. We're getting like flash flood advisories, thunderstorms, hardcore winds, like the whole nine, right? Just shy of tornadoes, we're getting it, and it really just isn't safe to be traveling to and from, so we just had to work our way around it, which kind of sucks, but we're managing there. For my home, we're still doing our own bit of reading. I'm reading several different things. I like to keep them on hand here, so I am making my way still through The Edge of Space-Time book by Chandra Prescott Weinstein, and then I am also working my way through another book that we talked about, the James Baldwin collection here from the what was that called? The American what? The American. We talked about this. You said you had other books from it as well. Library of America. That's what it was. And so I'm going through that, and then also my daughter, for our summer reading project, is reading the very first Harry Potter book, and I am reading that with her. So that's
Harry Potter.
Yes, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone if you're American, Philosopher's Stone if you're an English child, because apparently for some reason they wanted to switch those up. Wait, I think I said that backwards. I think for America it's Philosopher's Stone, and then in England it's Sorcerer's Stone.
No, it's the other way around. In UK, it's the Philosopher's Stone. In America, it's the Sorcerer's Stone, because in America, we don't really remember the storyline about the Philosopher's Stone, how it's supposed to be able to change. I think it's supposed to be able to help change anything into gold, but she uses it as alchemy, which is so she changed it to the sorcerer, or it was changed to Sorcerer's Stone in America because wizards, sorcery,
Yeah.
Sorcerer's Stone.
Whichever. Apparently, we did. Long story short, we got two different versions. It's the same story,
Right.
but they just flipped that word for cultural connotation.
Exactly.
Whatever, doesn't matter. But we're reading that right now. My daughter, she has the rule is right now she has to do a chapter a day. So we're working our way through that, albeit a little slowly. My hope is that she will begin to enjoy the book, and so then she'll want to read more than a chapter a day. Gotta
Right.
say that low because she might be, hearing me. And that might thwart my plans because she's remarkably stubborn. Don't know where she gets it from. And trying to encourage her to read as much as possible. So my hope is we will make it through at least the first and second book before school starts. And then that way through the school year, she will have the other books that she can work through at her own pace. So we'll see how that goes.
Right.
We're not here to talk about all that. We are here to talk about Learning Curve and
Right.
Star Trek Voyager.
Yep.
And do you want to give the recap, or would you like me to speed us through it?
I think give this one. It's not too bad.
Yeah, go
Yeah, I
for it.
think it's pretty simple. Yeah. All right. So we basically have two running plot lines at this one. They're related, but we have two plot lines going on. The first one is that we have a series of Maquis members that the group, Janeway and Tuvok and Chakotay believe could use some kind of crack Federation training. They aren't. They're part of the Maquis crew. That's part of now the Starfleet crew, but they never went through Starfleet, and they're having some problems kind of integrating with the rest of the crew. So Tuvok is given the task of training them because he apparently for 16 years at one point was actually at the academy. So he already has experience in the role. He's given the job. In particular, the four, he's given four people to teach. We have Kenneth, Dalby, Chell, Garen, and Mariah. And Kenneth is the one that he butts heads with the most. He's the oldest of the four. He's was already involved very much with the Maquis. Chell is a very talkative character. Garen is a young,
Bajoran.
Bajoran, thank you. And Mariah likes to have her hairband in place. So they get all, trained up by Tuvok, but it's not going so well, especially because Kenneth isn't interested in having to submit. None of them are, because what is the Federation crew going to do? What is Janeway going to do? Throw him in the brig for 70 years? Like, he's willing to help out and do things on the ship, but he's not interested in being harangued by anyone, including Tuvok. Tuvok, of course, puts them through quite a strict regimen, including, running around on one of the decks, with 10% gravity increased, etc. But the problem he's experiencing is that none of these people ever volunteered for this position. They didn't come aboard the a Federation starship because they agreed to do so. They were forced to be here. This is a situation of convenience. They were all thrown out into the Gamma Quadrant altogether against their will. So he is having trouble getting them to, work with him. So he speaks with Neelix, and Neelix convinces him that it's not that he needs to get them to bend to his rules. They're too stiff, and he's needs them to get them to bend. It's that he needs to bend. He needs to get to know them better. And so he does try to meet with Kenneth in a the pool hall, and tries to connect with him. And Kenneth reveals, the reason he joined up with the Maquis is because he grew up on the edge of Federation space. He got married. His wife was killed by the Cardassians. Like, he's a hard, rough and tumble dude. He's not here to yes sir, do a bunch of stuff. Like, he's here because this is where life has brought him. So Tuvok can do whatever he wants, but he's not going to just play nice just because Tuvok is now trying to get to know him as a friend. So Tuvok is really up against he's having trouble here. This is not working out. Meanwhile, the second plot line is that we might remember from the pilot episode, the ship Voyager was given bioneural gel packs as a new way of maintaining the systems on the ship. that is having some trouble. The gel packs are becoming infected somehow because, again, they are bio-neural gel packs. So there's a biological component, and something is infecting them and causing them to fail. And because the entire ship is designed to operate on these bio-neural gel packs, they are the increasing failure is a real problem. They were expected to last a very long time, but this infection is spreading. It turns out that Neelix's attempt to make cheese is the reason for the problem. Cheese is for those who I guess aren't aware, I wasn't quite aware of this, but I guess I was slightly. There's a level of bacteria growth involved in making cheese, and that somehow got spores got out into the gel packs. But it turns out that's actually the viruses that the bacteria carried that's the problem, and so they basically have to raise the temperature of the bio-neural gel packs. We have to raise our temperature, we get a fever to help kill off the infection. Well, the bio-neural gel packs need someone to do that for them. And so while the good doctor is basically enjoying himself, the rest of the entire ship has to be brought up to a very high temperature in order to kill off this infection. They are successful in doing so. During the process, Tuvok and his little crew are in one of the holodecks, and the young Garen is almost left to die, if you will, by Tuvok, but he's convinced by Kenneth to go rescue him. And so Tuvok actually does fall unconscious, just like Garen has, because of the malfunctioning gel packs, and the other three have to come rescue them in turn. But they basically all learn to respect each other from this incident, and that is the end of the episode and the end of the season. So kind of ends on not so much a cliffhanger, but kind of a bump, because basically the entire ship was out of commission, and the doctor alone was almost he is having a good time. I love the acting of that particular bit from the who plays the doctor again?
Robert Picardo.
Robert Picardo. You can tell he's having a good time. The rest of the crew is sweating and exhausted and just rolling their eyes at him basically. But anyway, yeah, I feel like it's a pretty good summary there. What do you think?
Yeah. No, you had the high points, and just want to say, because we're going to come back to this, but I just want to leave it out there. It's so great and convenient that Voyager was able to find this perfectly isolated area of deep space to be completely powered down and left at the mercy of these gel packs to be able to do this thing, and no one found them, no one attacked them, no one tried to take anything from them, nothing. They just perfect little space to be otherwise incapacitated.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, like you said, this is the final episode of the first season, a shorter first season than perhaps we're typically used to. What did you think of this episode?
Yeah, I think this was actually a pretty decently good one. It had both the character-driven elements of the Tuvok teaching the Maquis characters, and there's a legitimate problem of the reason he can't get, he can't, relate to them is they didn't volunteer to join up. They don't have some sort of desire and hope to be accepted or to prove themselves to him. They are there because that's just the way things are. And they do not appreciate the kind of expectations that are put upon them. Now, I think we can see things from Tuvok's perspective, like, hey, this is the way things are, therefore we need to all be able to communicate on the same level. The opening scene outside of the actual Janeway scene, which I didn't mention, we'll talk about that in a minute. But the first opening scene is, one of these gel packs is going down, and Kenneth has taken it upon himself to just go and try and figure out what the problem is, and in the process hasn't done the proper protocol to notify people for what he's doing. Mm-hmm. So if Tuvok basically said, I'm very appreciative, and you've done well to take initiative. It's just, if you would, I would just appreciate if you would make sure to, notify, again, it's over in engineering, we have Torres. So he knows Torres. Hey, just notify Torres what you're doing, please. She later relies on him when things are going bad in another scene. So clearly
Yeah.
she respects him. If he just said, "Hey, we just didn't know what was going on because you didn't tell anybody," I feel like anybody could say, "Hey, that's just a quick protocol fix. It
Yeah.
doesn't require some massive training boot camp."
Well, so the whole point that's made through this is like you said, they have crew members who aren't aware of how things are done as Starfleet officers. Um, People signed up from all walks of life to be the Maquis, and they didn't really turn people down because they
Right.
needed people to fight, fight the Cardassians and so forth. So unlike Chakotay, who is an officer who did go through at least part of the academy, and Chakotay is actually an academy graduate. He just later resigned his commission. B'Elanna went through the academy, but she, quit midway
Right.
through. So then you have people like Kenneth Dalby who never went. That wasn't something that was ever on his radar to do. And that's kind of how some of these other officers are as well. So them not being aware of Starfleet protocol is kind of understandable. Now, I think that you were a little bit softer here than Tuvok was when you were explaining, when Janeway had the issue in the holodeck. They're trying to figure out what's going on. Tuvok is investigating. He finds Dalby making some repairs. He's not like, oh, hey, next time, why don't you, follow this, protocol? He's basically like, hey, there are rules for a reason and you're breaking them.
Right.
Cut it out. That's
Yeah.
kind of how he comes at him.
Exactly.
And Dalby, who is already a bit of a hothead, didn't take it well. And
Right.
that's more than anything what sets Tuvok off. And
Right.
when he goes to later report, he's like, you became insubordinate. Vulcans tend to come off a little bit rude to other people, but Tuvok is also, he's rather forceful. And he makes it pretty evident throughout the episode that he just kind of expects people to adhere to whatever he says, especially when he's put in a position of direct authority over them, as he is when he's made the instructor. He doesn't understand that why they're giving him so much pushback. And that's part of the learning curve for both of them. Both the people that are selected and Tuvok is learning how to have a better interpersonal relationship with individuals. I just always found it very fascinating that Tuvok, who we know has been in Starfleet for quite a long time, even Janeway says he taught at the academy for 16 years, doesn't know this and doesn't do a better job of adapting to these individuals initially when the situation starts. Now, I want to start with our gel pack storyline more than getting into all that, because the gel packs are our first introduction to a totally new type of technology for Trek. They do this every so often, but it's been a while. Like everything that we got on, Next Generation with the holodecks and the replicators and the new phasers and all that stuff was all great, but they kind of became standardized for, Deep Space Nine and obviously for Voyager. Voyager then mentions these gel packs, and despite their mention in the pilot, this is the first time that we've seen them do anything else with them, and we start to understand just how important they are to the workings of Voyager. So again, the bioneural gel packs basically are taking the place of the isolinear chips. Now, those are probably the most famous little prop device that we've seen so far. They're those little, rectangular chips that we've seen in a bunch of different episodes. The famous episode, The Naked Now, when on Next Generation, when the crew is basically drunk and Data has to fast, do his little Android thing and plug them all back in to get the computer working again.
Right.
Those are those chips. That's what Chakotay is talking about when he says
episode 2, right, of TNG.
Right. And that's the first time we ever saw them, and they became a staple across Trek. So the importance of the isolinear chip is they help to work through all the computer's major calculations, right? So when you're plugging in what you want the system to do, it's the one that's going through all of the various scenarios and probabilities or whatever to come out with the outcomes. The gel packs are basically, the best way to think of them is like brain tissue in biomimetic gel, right? Which you've also heard of before as well on Deep Space Nine. So it's suspended in this gel medium, which allows for them to input the same kind of calculations, but it can interpret and make these calculations at a much faster pace than the isolinear chips can. Okay, so it almost allows the ship to intuit to a certain degree things that it needs to do.
Right.
So it's way more advanced than anything else that we've seen used when it comes to computing, and the fact that they've been integrated so much into Voyager is telling, and could also lead to a potential problem. As we point out in the episode, those things regulate more than half the systems on the ship. If they
Yeah.
go down, they're going to be screwed.
Right.
Now, the good thing is they're supposed to be practically indestructible, and they're supposed to last practically forever. So unless
Right.
something happens like an infection or you directly take a phaser to one, they're going to work.
Right.
Okay. So that's why it becomes such a concern when they find a couple of them are malfunctioning, because this isn't something that should be happening.
Right. Yeah, I just want to say that the funny thing about this biogel is that you would think that this problem of infection would have been realized by whoever came up with the technology. And so it's funny that they let me put it this way. This episode presents a problem that has a realistic, like, I can understand bio something, infection, blah, blah, blah. But it means that it seems so obvious that it seems a little silly that in story it has been overlooked. I mean, whatever. Fine.
So if I'm remembering the episode correctly, they were able to recognize that it was infected, but the problem was they couldn't figure out what had infected it. And it wasn't until Kes pointed out the whole
the virus part.
The virus part, right. And that was what was eventually part of Tuvok's investigation, was where did the bacteria come from? They were aware of an infection, but they couldn't figure out where the bacteria had even been introduced.
True.
And then ultimately they find that it's Neelix and his cheese making, which led to the bacteria, which then it was actually a virus living inside the bacteria that caused the problem.
Right. My whole point is, like, the fact that they need to heat up the ship using the warp core to basically create a fever of sorts for the biogel. Like, the fact that isn't already a step in the process of making the biogel pack, that the pack doesn't have a heating mechanism.
It doesn't have an immune system, basically.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just nitpicking. I'm not saying that the episode works. It's a fun episode. Again, I like this episode overall, so I'm not.
For me, my conspiratorial thought process was, who's the mad scientist who came up with these, and why didn't anybody in Starfleet say, you want us to put basically new age cybernetic materials on our ships? Have you not heard of the Borg? No, we're not going to do that.
Well, maybe the argument there is that the Borg were going to assimilate you anyway. So
and that's the other thing too. What an easy way to, like, we'll put all these bioneural gel packs on your ships, right? Half your ship functions are now transition over to them. All you need is one Borg to assimilate a gel pack, and now your whole ship is assimilated because of it. Yeah, terrible idea.
Yeah,
to do
there's
this.
Like, the fact that the infection could spread through the air ducts and from one to another.
From cheese, man. Your ship was taken out by cheese. Imagine what the Borg could do in this situation. I thought that was a terrible mistake, that when they introduced this and talking about it being a bioneural half cybernetic whatever component. Yeah, just not a good idea. Not a good idea at all.
Even though it makes things faster than the isolinear chips.
I mean, it makes it faster, but at what point, we never. Yeah, what's the cost? And, like, do something more with these. I mean, there needed to be more to make this
safeguards.
More of a relevant problem, which we just don't see it.
Was Voyager intended to be more of an experimental ship? With the Doctor the way he is, and
the Doctor was not supposed to necessarily be the Doctor. He was a supplementary program, but yes, Voyager was slated to be more of like a mid-range vessel. So they did put some more experimental technologies in it, but it wasn't supposed to be like used like this. So Voyager is always going to be an exception to a lot of things because of their extreme circumstances. So we'll always bear that in mind, of course, but still, Just like you couldn't have put a worse ship in a position that they've got Voyager in right now with their experimental technology, which you only have, what they say, 47 backups of, and no spaceport anywhere where you can replace them if you need to. So Chakotay makes a good call on saying, hey, we might be able to take some of these systems and switch them back to the old isolinear chips. And then we can, save the bioneural gel packs for critical systems, So that's a smart call that we see them make here. But I'm going to give you a mild spoiler. We never really see them do anything else with it again. So
okay.
for all the critical importance of the bioneural gel packs.
Boom.
Yeah.
This is it.
Great. Okay.
Gotcha.
So now on to our main plot here, which is, of course, Tuvok teaching these people how to be Starfleet officers. Do you agree with Janeway's decision that he was the best choice, or do you think they should have gone with Chakotay, as Tuvok suggested?
Well, it comes down to what was the purpose of what she wanted to accomplish. Because if it was a straight-up crash course boot camp, learn the Federation, Tuvok seems the natural choice. But in the end, the better choice would have been Chakotay, yes, because he's the bridge. He's been in the Federation, as you said. He resigned his commission. He's integrated well. He's fine. He's second in command.
He's a great example to them of what they could achieve.
Exactly, and he could basically be like, "Hey guys, we basically just need to." Most of the people on the ship are Federation, so unfortunately, we just have to kind of like if it was the other way around, we would expect them to, accept our ideas. So we have to accept theirs because they're the majority on the ship and it's their ship, etc. So, yes, I think Chakotay would have been the better choice, especially in the end. And the ultimate, the final, the kid gets knocked out, and Tuvok goes and saves him, and everyone's happy at the end. Yeah, that's a bit on the nose. However, I would put it this way. In the long run, if you're going to be on this ship for a long period of time, then Tuvok would make sense in the sense of he's the security officer, so he's the guy who's supposed to maintain protocol. Well, no, that's actually the first officer. I'm wrong about that. Yeah, Tuvok was right. It should have been Chakotay. I don't know. I feel like the reason she chose Tuvok was because, again, he has the 16 years experience. She's only trying to get them to just understand Federation stuff. Maybe it's just that Tuvok went too hard on him, frankly. He had them running laps around the ship. He had the one guy running laps in the first thing because he was mad at him, basically. Like, you're talking too much, go run laps.
Yeah. This really, the lesson here I felt was more about Tuvok learning how to deal with people,
Right.
He comes off as a very hard taskmaster right away. And it's part of it is, yes, this is, like he tells Neelix, he's got time-honored traditional training techniques that he's using. But also a part of it is he didn't want to do it in the first place. Let's just be clear here. He did not want to do that job. That's why he suggested Chakotay in the first place. He didn't. He had no mindset of training cadets. So the first opportunity he gets, he sees how much disdain they have for even being called out to do it. He just kind of gives a lot of that back to him. So much for him being this dispassionate, unfeeling Vulcan, his annoyance comes through pretty strong, right off the bat. Now, normally, I love Tuvok. I think he's a great character, and I do defend the character a lot. But in this, especially in these opening moments, Tuvok is very wrong. He lets his emotions show, and he treats these people badly.
Showed emotions?
Oh yeah, he definitely did.
Dare you say anything of the sort?
Well, I did, and I'll say it again. Tuvok let his emotions show and treated them poorly.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, I
agree. Yeah, I agree with that assessment. Keep going. Sorry.
No, I also agree with some of his statements about these guys. Chael is annoying to say the least.
Yep.
You know, um, Henley had to know that her headband wasn't going to fly, and
Right.
just like the other guy with the earring, the Bajoran, I forget what his name was. He knew, and he even stopped Tuvok before he said, "Yeah, I know." Pulls it off, So yeah, it's just like you guys kind of knew that you were violating things before you were selected to this. So you don't walk in here and be like, "I don't know why I was called out for this." Yes, you do.
Right.
You're not stupid.
Right.
But of all the people that were selected, I feel like Henley was the best at least attempting to adapt. She was more of a go along to get along when she fell in line with Ken when he was having his initial chest thumping against Tuvok. But
Right.
she falls in line with everything else that they do. Like she finishes the run on
Yep.
time. She falls in line with her position when they go on the holodeck to do the simulation when they're in command.
Right.
She does what she's supposed to do. So it's like you don't have a problem with following the rules. You just, I don't know, maybe you just needed a firmer hand.
Right. Yeah, and part of the question becomes, how much do they need these people to be, like, I can understand in engineering we do things a certain way. Like maybe that should have been the solution. It was like whoever is the team lead or the leader of this part of the ship, like, Torres is the one who teaches Henley, is that his name? Or what's the
Dalby.
Dalby, excuse me. Teaches Dalby how to basically follow protocol a bit better. Like it's a simple fix.
Mhm.
And yes, he did get hot headed. He did speak back to Tuvok when Tuvok confronted him. He was insubordinate in that sense. But it really comes down to like Janeway and basically Janeway, Torres, and Chakotay, along with Tuvok. I mean, Tuvok would have maybe not been a good person to have in the room because he would have just been glaring at everybody. But basically, sitting everyone down, be like, "Hey guys, we've been together for a few months. There's still been some rough patches we think we should work out. Let's just sit down and talk and have some productive meetings." I don't know if sitting down is what they would want. This is the Federation for crying out loud. But basically, Tuvok's approach was boot camp. I mean, really, boot camp was the thing. And doggone it, I don't think I would appreciate having to run laps either. Now, again, on the other hand, I totally understand the idea of like, hey, you're the Federation now, and we're going to be doing things where you might be required to, like any military organization, required to endure physical hardship beyond what you would normally appreciate. So we got to practice. But yeah, the pool scene comes off as, I mean, that's the whole point. It just comes off as he's trying, and he's almost trying too hard. Not because he's not legitimately trying, but because like you can't force someone to respect you. And
right.
That's the real issue, is that Tuvok has always been given respect because of the culture he comes from, the Federation itself, and the fact that the people he was teaching were wanting something from him. They
wanted to be there. They wanted to be there. When he taught Academy cadets, they had signed up to the Academy. They knew that it was going to be tough. This is what they had chose, to do. So this is the complete opposite here when he's dealing with these other people. They were not a part of Starfleet. They had not gone to Starfleet Academy. They didn't choose to be on Voyager either. So he's not acknowledging any of that. He's like, look, we're here now. You're going to do as we say or else, basically.
Right.
And yeah, they're of course going to give a lot of pushback.
Yeah. And we never see Tuvok go to Chakotay or Janeway and say, hey, I'm having trouble. We only ever see after the first meeting Chakotay meet with the four of them, and they're complaining about it. And they're like, we should do these things the Maquis way. And he's like, all right, fine, and punches the guy across the face. And it's like,
which then proceeds with the longest heavy breathing scene I have ever seen in my entire life. He gives the guy a sucker punch, really, and then spends the next 10 minutes talking to the dude, and he's every other word. And I'm like, dude, if you are that winded from one punch, you need some physical training yourself. Maybe you need to be taking that jogging course because that was just ridiculous.
Yeah, Chakotay. He also needs to take a few runs.
Yeah, it needs a
Um,
couple of laps, man. That was just ridiculous.
yeah, but I guess the question really becomes is like the Maquis was not a professional organization like the Federation.
No,
They were
they were
something else.
ragtag people. So the
It's a
Maquis,
guerrilla action. Yeah.
yes, guerrilla force that was put together. Initially, the first Maquis were like farmers. They were colonizers. They had
Right.
their colony just happened to be drawn on the wrong side of a armistice line, basically, and they had two choices: give up your land or fight for your land. They chose to fight. So
Right.
that first generation of Maquis were just people who were settlers there, former Federation citizens, sure, but they hadn't ever signed up or been in Starfleet. They hadn't
Right.
received any kind of formal training, and
Right.
that really kind of continued until when the Maquis were really amping things up. You found people like Chakotay who had family ties to people in the neutral zone and abandoned Starfleet to go and help their family, and
Right.
that's where their training eventually came from. But people like Dalby, you know, they were just farmers. They were, you know, yeah, settlers.
Right. Yeah. So the question becomes is, I mean, when he says we should do things the Maquis way, what does he mean? Um, because it's never the character himself in this group. So again, the character is Dalby.
Kenneth Dalby, yeah.
He never clearly says like what his problem is. And when Chakotay shows up, not only is this the only scene we've ever had with him and Chakotay ever talking together, we never see them again talk to each other. And frankly, I would think that the first officer punching anyone on the ship, even to prove a point, is still breaking some kind of protocol.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like, what are you gonna do? Like,
Well,
that's
I
even what
guess
they're saying in the scene. What are they gonna do to us? Throw us in the brig? Okay, well, what are they gonna do to the senior officer? You walked out on one senior officer. Now we have another senior officer who's just hit you.
right,
You don't get to pick and choose which rules you follow.
right,
So if you want Chakotay punished, then we also have to punish you for walking out on the training that we ordered you to do
right,
with Tuvok. So
right.
yeah,
Yeah, my only point though is that at no point does anyone, Tuvok, Chakotay, really sit down and say, okay, what's wrong with what's going on, how things are, like you're upset, what's up, what's wrong, and here's why we're doing things the way we're doing them. And there's never really good communication from either side.
which you bring up a great point, and that's something that Janeway even says in the beginning when they're talking about doing this. She says these people have no understanding of what we're about. We need to explain to them why we do things the way that we do,
Right,
and then no explanation is given. None. It's just you're a part of our crew. You're gonna do it our way. No
right,
explanation given. So yeah, great call out. She does say exactly that's what's needed, and then they don't do it.
right. Yeah, this episode is a good example of, and this I'm talking about in real life. So many of problems would be figured out if people would just sit down and like get some clarification. Like, hey, thank you again. Like I said earlier on, if Tuvok had said to Dalby at the beginning, "Hey, thank you for like looking into this. The problem I have here is just that no one knew what was going on, and so we were concerned." Like, just present it in a way that's self-interested for them. If you
Which
got hurt back there, we don't know where you are or what you're doing or how to help you. So, we just, if you would, I would appreciate if you would just make sure you follow
yeah,
protocol so that we are all on the same page. We're all working together. We're a team now. Tuvok goes hard, and so he comes back at him hard. But
which is kind of how we operate in our society. Well, ideally, anyway, right? We like to
right,
assume that people aren't doing necessarily bad things on purpose, but they might be doing things because they don't know that there's a better way or a proper procedure or whatever situation may be. So when like at work, for example, if you find that someone has done something wrong, we don't immediately fire them. We talk to them first and just hey, are you aware? This is the situation that you've put us in. This is our protocol. And then there might be some, depending on the act, some disciplinary things. But typically, first offenses, we go more on the explanation side and documentation side than we do just outright firing. We
Right.
don't see that employed here. Later, there is the scene where it's just Tuvok and Dalby playing pool, and he explains to Dalby that the reason that they were each selected was they felt they could benefit, and in particular, the young Bajoran guy that Dalby wants to be close to but isn't. Tuvok explains that Chakotay selected him because he noticed that the guy was rather withdrawn, seemed aimless, without focus, and so they felt like by doing this, it would give him a way to find ways he can contribute, to feel like he's a part of the crew, and to, kind of come out of that isolationist shell he's built up for himself. And when he explains this to Dalby relaxes a little bit. He's like, like that makes sense to him because even he has noticed that this kid is having a lot of difficulties.
Yeah.
And so he's a little bit more appreciative, but then he's just like, okay, that works for him. Doesn't work for me. I don't need to be a charity case. I don't have these issues. I'm not the young kid trying to find my way in the world. I'm older. I'm more experienced. I'm more, aware of myself. So while that may be well and good for him, it's not going to work for me.
Right.
And then he storms out. But at least he had a little bit more of an understanding. And again, he did not totally rebuff what Tuvok was saying. So it shows that if maybe he had done that and said, okay, well, yeah, the reason that guy was enrolled in this is these are our goals for him. Our goals for you are different. And maybe explain what those goals are might have worked in his favor a little bit more. Hey, we're not trying to make you buddy with everybody on the crew, but you do need to understand that there is a chain of command. There is a structure that we follow, and your hot-headed attitude and just I'm going to do whatever, whenever doesn't work for us.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about all this is it becomes a question of who's at fault. Is it the writers at fault for creating a storyline that was kind of a little bit too silly, or is it a good writer writing about flawed characters? And so I feel like it's a little bit of both. I feel like because like for example the biogel situation,
Mm-hmm.
the whole plot there only hinges on the fact that someone didn't think through the ramifications that this plot presented. So is that the writers not giving the internal engineers, heads the thought of process of that? Or again, so is Tuvok he's done this for a long time, but was Chakotay the better choice? Could Chakotay have done a better job in the mess hall when he punched the guy? So I feel like it's kind of a mix of both, but I still like the idea of the episode.
Yeah, I think that I do. I think the idea, like you said, I think the idea is a good one. It's a solid one, but I think there are just certain things that were not executed very well that would have made this.
I would have liked this episode could have been given another editing do-over maybe. Yeah. Apparently, according to Wikipedia, the Tuvok being teaching some marquee characters was actually originally a subplot, but they liked the idea enough that they bumped it up to the A plot. Yeah. So I like that. Again, I feel like it's just it could have used a little more work just to work out some kinks. Every time I think that, I always think of well, you have only so much time to write an episode that it can only last for 40 minutes, and you got to be done by the end of the 40 minutes. So don't expect too much.
And we often see that the endings of these episodes obviously take the biggest hit when it comes to things like that, because certain things they wrap up a little too neatly when there should be some more mess. And that was always the problem when you had television that they were not going to serialize. So, serialization was a big no-no for a very long time. They wanted it to be a show that you could just kind of pick up from anywhere and watch an episode or two and feel something and move on. When we got into shows that had serialization, where you needed to know what happened 4, 5, 6 episodes ago to understand this one, they wanted to really stay away from that for as long as possible. But when it did finally come about, a lot of those shows are the ones that hit the critical acclaim the quickest and found cult followings, and are shows that are mainstays and are looked back on Bonding. Voyager is one of those shows I feel like kind of straddles that gap a bit because we have this overarching plot of a show of a crew trying to make their way home, but these episodes are almost work as like mini resets to a certain degree. Only certain tiny bits of them are carried forward to achieve the overall narrative. It's also interesting to note that this episode became the inspiration for a series of video games for the Star Trek universe. Back when they were, pumping out PC games, it was called Star Trek Voyager Elite Force, and then of course there was Elite Force 2. These games deal with Voyagers stranded in the Delta Quadrant, needing to find various resources, combat very aggressive enemies, and things like that. So they form what's called hazard teams. And these hazard teams are specially trained individuals from Voyager's crew who they're trained by Tuvok, who takes them through an academy-like setting in the holodecks to train them up on how to do certain things, take on certain enemies. They have specialized weapons that are designed just for them, and they kind of become like almost like a Marines type situation for Voyager to deploy whenever hands-on, tactics are required. So even though that was something that was spawned off into game format, we do not ever see the hazard teams on Voyager. So don't go looking for them. Just wanted to say that's something that this episode inspired. The games are available still for play. If you have Steam or anything like that, you can always download the games. I did that maybe about a year ago. There's been no updates to the games whatsoever. So if you want a very retro feel to a game, like there's none better. If you were a gamer back in the mid to late 90s, you might remember things like Unreal Engine was very popular. Okay, so it's basically that, but Star Trek. Okay, so I always get a kick out of it whenever I turn them on. And they have a convincing little storyline that goes along with it too. Lots of things you can still play with. So if you're interested at all, go to Steam, check it out. Star Trek Voyager, Elite Force, and Elite Force 2. Great games to just kind of spend an afternoon on. They don't take long at all.
Right.
So. But all right, I think that may just about do it. Is there anything that you would like to talk about from this episode that you found interesting?
There's two other little details we haven't talked about. I didn't mention in my recap two details. I'll start with the second one, even though there's one that comes before it. There is a scene where Tuvok has these four Maquis characters do a run the bridge. Like, we're going to do it's a Kobayashi Maru. And I'm like, and that's probably the pinnacle of the example of Tuvok is going too hard on them. Like, who the hell throws a group of, well, not raw recruits exactly, but, this is a disciplinarian / trying to get people in on how this thing works. And they aren't bridge material. No one has ever said they're intended to operate on the bridge. So apparently all of them are prepared to operate the station.
The various stations, yeah.
Like, even the young kid is able to do his bit. But the whole problem is that it's a classic Kobayashi Maru situation. It's literally the Kobayashi Maru, right?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a Ferengi ship that's calling for help. We have to go rescue it. Oh, two birds of prey decloak and start shooting at us. Oh, we can't do anything but shoot back and we all die. And Tuvok is like, nah, you should have retreated. And they're like, really? Like, you're giving us a hard time because we didn't retreat? Like, what do you want from us? And again, if you were an officer in the academy and you knew you'd been through the process of learning what it means to be an officer, like this is officer teachings, right? This isn't just learn how to operate on the ship.
Exactly. The Kobayashi Maru test was always a command level test. That was something that people who were going to be in command were supposed to take. So we don't know that that's the case for any of these officers. We don't know what their experience of this is. I really don't know what Tuvok was thinking here either when he threw
Right.
them into that particular scenario.
He has
Uh,
literally learned to swim by dropping you in the deep end type
yeah,
teacher.
basically, and we don't know where this falls in their training. Like, was this day 1? Was this day 10? Like, we're
Yeah.
kind of up in the air. Like, that's one thing about my biggest gripe on anything Star Trek is they don't do timelines very well. And
Yeah.
for a show like this, I feel like just an added line somewhere, we've been at this for 2 weeks, like something
Mhm.
like that to give us a little bit of a frame of reference, like, hey, you were selected to do this and we've been doing it now for 2 weeks and you're still no better.
Right.
Something to give an explanation for why things are the way that they are would be great. But
Right.
none of the show, and I mean none of the Star Trek shows have ever been good at doing that.
Yeah, there have definitely been times when I think are 2 episodes or even more supposed to be running simultaneously. Like I feel like the captain's logs always present the storyline as if this is a contained series of events
Hmm.
that is separate from the next episode series of events. But if you actually assume that, let's say, as you pointed out, that Tuvok has been doing this for like 2 weeks. And so last episode was actually, so like the first bit of this episode where they have the first gel pack going bad, etc. Like that was 2 weeks ago. And then last week's episode is actually what happened since then. And now we're finalizing the bits of storyline that actually originated what it would have been, before last week's episode.
Hmm.
Whatever. That would be a fun thing to explore. Obviously, it would be pretty head scratchers for people who were just watching every week in the middle of the 90s. They didn't have like the Netflix, here, let's give you a clear explanation of the timeline kind of storyline. But there are definitely times when I like, yeah, it'd be nice to think, or at least have some sort of presentation that, yes, this storyline, you're seeing a series of events that have been going on the whole time. We haven't
Right.
told you about this storyline because it wasn't necessary. But now we're going to give you this has been happening in the background for the last 6 months. And now the conclusion is going to be presented here as well. So,
You know,
but
you talking about that, I think that would be a fantastic way to film a show, but it would be so hard.
mm,
Like just imagine like you got your main scene, like the scene where Tuvok is talking to Neelix about the cheese and the bacteria and whatever else. But like you also hear in the background people are talking, and that you're catching little snippets. And then the next episode, it's them and you see Tuvok and Neelix dealing with the cheese display, and you're like, oh, so
this
this
is,
was going on while that was, happening.
yeah. Uh huh.
So it's almost like they would have been filming maybe 2 or even 3 episodes simultaneously. So that
Yeah.
now there's another scene in a corridor somewhere, and they're talking, and then we see Chell and Henley come running around the corner because they're doing the laps that
Right.
Tuvok was doing. Like all of that could have been worked in. It would have made for some interesting television for sure. But yeah, you'd have probably had to have multiple filming crews and teams and stuff to do all of that to coordinate it perfectly to make it work. Probably more expensive than it's worth, but
Right.
I think that would be an interesting way to do a show
Yeah.
as well.
Well, murder mysteries are notorious for that kind of stuff of like, oh, this is what one character saw, but we now go see the storyline from this character's perspective, and we see details in the
Mhm.
background that we saw the first time around.
Yeah, and
Um,
they're trying to put together an away team. Oh wait, Chell's out of commission. He's degaussing the transporter bay. So
oh
or
yeah, that was
we can't. Yeah, we can't use transporter room 1. We got to use 2 because Chell's degaussing that one. He won't be done for 26 hours. So we got to use the one down here.
and Kim. I have to say, you bring up that transporter scene. Kim was a grade A. You missed a spot. Like
Yeah,
you
right at
did
the end.
not just. You did not just say that. Oh man. So the other scene that I didn't do in my recap was the very opening scene of the entire episode was Janeway in the holodeck as the governess character. I'm sure you remember her name, but
Hmm.
what is the governess character's name?
Davenport,
Something like that. Anyway, she's
Lucy Davenport. That's her character's name.
we see her opening up the windows and practicing the greeting she's going to give the children. And the first one, she feels it's too formal, and the second one is too familiar. But then the children walk in, and she's doing that, and the boy, who's only like maybe 5, is super like,
Annoying.
you're going to refer to me as my lord and my sister as my lady, and like his sister is older than he is, and she's yeah, kid's annoying. And then the girl is saying that I like painted something and gave it to my mother. And the boy's like, no, mother's dead. She's like, no, I saw her last night. But then the program glitches because of the gel pack and the kids both disappear. So it's not clear if like the reason the girl was having this hallucination was because the gel packs were starting to malfunction, or if the character.
I'm gonna level of, my critique of this is I hate it.
Yeah.
I don't like this at all because why are we getting so much detail on the holodeck program?
Right.
Why? Why are we getting so much detail? And I'm gonna, again, spoiler, we don't get a resolution. We don't hear the rest of this story. So why are they giving us?
Is this the last time we see the Davenport character, or
no? It comes back. I think maybe 1 or 2 more times total. But and it's the same thing. It's over. It's a huge overproduction, in my opinion, of a story that we never finish. We never figure out what's going on with these characters. And it's just like, why are you giving us so much elaborate detail of something that we're never going to see again?
Right.
They use the holodeck for other stuff later on in other scenarios, but we never see her return. I think it's like 2 more episodes where there's something to do with this particular program, but then she like wholly abandons it. We never see her play this particular program after those times. I don't know why they go so far down this particular rabbit hole and giving us all this information about characters that don't do anything else.
Yeah, they hire these 2 kids to play these parts. And yes, the boy is annoying, but he does a fantastic job. This little kid nails this little role of his. And then in the previous episode where we had her as the governess, we had her meeting like the lady of the house, or
the other woman who runs the household.
Yeah, runs the house, and then the lord of the house, and he's like, I'm hard to please, and she's like, well, don't worry. And it's just curious because this whole plot line
goes nowhere.
Well, ultimately, it's not that it goes nowhere. To me, it feels very strange because, again, Janeway is a woman who has a fiancé, but she doesn't have kids. So it feels just strange to me that she is basically, her fantasy is being a governess in the 1900s, like late 1800s. To some English kids.
This is one of those things where I feel like they weren't really sure what direction they wanted to take Janeway.
Right.
Again, this is season 1, so this would have been coming out in 95. So I just don't think that they knew exactly what direction they wanted to take the Janeway character. And I also think they had some of these actors on retainer for other things. Like the woman who plays the head whatever, who runs the home, she has appeared several times in Trek. The little boy has also been in Trek, and he actually comes back fairly recently. He was in Star Trek Picard as well. So I just wonder if that's what was going on. Like there was some kind of contractual obligation to use these people because they had deals with Paramount at the time, and they were like, hey, we're launching a new show. We'll help with contractual fulfillments by throwing these guys a bone until we get them onto their next project or whatever it is. So, but yeah, by the time they realized what direction they wanted to take her, we'd gotten way too much information about this holodeck program. And then they just quietly were like, don't bring that up again.
Right.
Ixnay on the governess.
Yeah. Well, I guess here's what I'm trying to think about. Why am I kind of weirded out by this? And I'm thinking about it more, and I'm realizing episodes about the holosuite, the holograms, the holodecks are usually episodes like we have Moriarty, we have the James Bond, Dr. Bashir as James Bond, and then all those episodes are always about how something malfunctions and how the danger becomes real. And
what do those all have in common besides the malfunction?
The
Have
danger
you
becomes real.
noticed? Yeah, but what do they have in common that makes that it that the danger becomes real?
That is all. Well, I have an idea, but are you thinking of something?
Yeah,
What is it? What are you thinking?
they all feature character recreations.
True.
Anytime that the holodeck malfunctions, it often is because they created. There's another person in there.
Right.
Moriarty, Bashir is the James Bond ripoff, and he's got the megalomaniacal guy that Cisco later inhabits.
Right.
Um, Janeway here with this malevolent with these characters in this holodeck program which malfunctions, and then we'll see later on. Again, sorry, mild spoiler. That's another thing in there. Anytime, think of Next Generation, Minuet, again because of a computer malfunction.
Right.
Anytime that all they were doing was using it for like basic training or like doing landscapes, like oh Picard wants to go horseback riding, for
Right.
example, no problems whatsoever.
Yes.
But when
Exactly.
they start creating people,
Right.
it's a problem.
Well, and usually the problem is always such with sort of danger. Again, the bullets become real. They can't escape the scenario. Something becomes dangerous, and so what is the if the whole idea of the hollow suite is that you can experience things that you otherwise would be unsafe to experience, I guess that's it. Is like what is so
Like,
special about raising two little English kids that
yeah,
JJ needs to do that?
like we always talk about the holodecks and how they're used here, and then we always say, well, what would I use the holodeck for? I know that for me personally, I would go places that I've never been.
Right,
Right, that would be probably the first thing that I would do.
right,
I don't know that I would worry so much about creating people. I could see like recreating certain things, like how cool would it be to be um, Iron Man or whatever,
yeah,
right? And do something like that, or yeah, those are things that I think of. And maybe this is the equivalent, but I guess for Janeway, maybe we're seeing it's more of an aspect of living a type of lifestyle that is wholly inaccessible in that particular future, right?
sure,
Because that would be, basically ancient Earth for her. Because I mean, they're set 400 or 500 years into the future, so she's what from the time period where that would have been prominent. She's almost 1,000 years into the future from that.
yeah,
So that's the same thing as us wanting to be Knights of the Round Table,
right,
right?
100%, right,
So I mean, we can look at it and be like, why is this the thing that she'd want to do? But I mean, but there's an aspect of us that would be like, oh, I would love to go want to be a part of a Viking whatever, right?
right.
Or so I guess that's the best way to make sure we're giving ourselves a proper frame of reference when we're viewing these people's holodeck programs. We can think of all the future stuff that we'd like to do with it because we don't live that.
Right.
But I mean, I guess the opposite would be true for them. The same way we would look at, like, again, medieval times or
Well,
whatever.
as I keep thinking about this and why I'm just curious about it. I'm trying to think about what about it. So there's several things. First off, we never have Janeway tell anybody what she's doing and why she's doing it. So we're just thrown into these situations just kind of blind, and it's just curious. There's no danger if she was locked in there with these kids because of some malfunction to the Hollow Suite, and she had to solve some problem to get out of it. Usually that's the part of it, right? Moriarty has actually, taken over the holodeck, and he actually is faking having escaped. Then there's the idea. What was the third thing I was thinking of? Damn it. Frick. There was a third idea. Janeway is. There's no danger. There's darn it. There was something else I was thinking of. But yeah, but she doesn't tell anybody what she's doing, which is just part of it. Like, we don't understand the fact of risk. I think is what gets me is like, oh, that's what it was. I was thinking of Beowulf because we had Kim do Beowulf. Like,
Mhm.
if I wanted to relive the Beowulf story and I know what the story is, I recite the lines. But what I'm experiencing is the thrill of battle. even though I know there's no danger. I don't. It's hard for a book to communicate sword swings. How did they actually win the fight, kind of thing. What is it that Janeway is trying to?
So
bring?
the issue here is you don't have a frame of reference for whatever story it is that she has recreated.
Right.
Like you said with Beowulf, we are aware of the Beowulf myth. We are aware of how that story ultimately plays out. So
Right.
we get what Harry may be trying to achieve there. We don't know the story that Janeway is using, what book this may be based off of, or if this is something that she created out of her own imagining. And because we're getting these, but because we're getting these little fragmented bits of a story, again, that further makes it harder for us to place what this is. Is this supposed to be a romantical, type of story? Is this a rip on The Sound of Music? Is this a murder mystery because the mom is mysteriously dead, and you got that weird other not governess who's a witch or some? There's so many things we don't know, so we don't have a frame of reference for this story, which again makes it hard to place. So I think that's what the issue here is, and unfortunately those are not questions that we're ever going to get the answer to.
Apparently it's Jane Eyre. It's inspired by Jane Eyre.
So yeah, I could see that, but again, there's no specific story that they're really going off of. They're more using Jane Eyre as like a setting for the story that they're telling, but that's not enough for us to be like it's not Beowulf. Like we know Beowulf. You can have a story set in that time period, a Viking story set in that time period, but to say it's Beowulf versus something reminiscent of Jane Eyre is not the same.
Right. Yeah, I guess this just brings up the whole issue or an interesting problem with the holodeck, which is what Data experiences when he plays Sherlock, is that if you know what the storyline is, you can recreate it perfectly. He knows what the clues are that the holodeck is giving him, so he knows which plot he's seeing and therefore solves it immediately. He can solve it with one clue.
And that's what leads him down the road of trouble, because Geordi says,
create a hologram character that can defeat Data, that can be a challenge to Data.
Style. Right.
Not a Sherlock Holmes style story that is new, but in the mode of a Sherlock Holmes story, with similar, plot developments, clues, but totally unwritten and unique. He makes Moriarty a Data character, a foil for Data, not a foil for Sherlock. So I guess, I don't want to talk. I mean, we've talked about this Janeway stuff for a while. So I just find this whole plot line curious. It feels like they're trying to say something with these little scenes, and if they abandon it, as you basically have insinuated, then it's sad. But it's like give us a whole episode based on this kind of, or not the whole episode, but she comes back throughout the episode. She's using this to teach herself something. She knows, there's some relationship on the ship that she has problem with.
Right.
So she's finding some way to cathartically deal with the problem by going to the holodeck and working it out, basically, in a different scenario. That would be great. Actually, I'd love that. But it feels like they're just, hey, we dressed her up in a dress and
again. I feel like this is one of those. They wanted to make sure that people understood that beneath the uniform, Janeway was still a woman. So they were trying to give us this. Here she is in the flowing dress and her big hair in the bun, and she's just swept up by this Victorian lord, and these children and whatever else. I think that's what they were trying to do, not realizing they were overplaying that hand, and people were noticing other things like the story. And then they're like, hey, we got to back off from this, because if we're not careful, we're going to end up having a long running situation that we're going to have to handle through multiple seasons. So they, did what they always do in a situation like this. They just dropped it completely. No one was forward thinking and saying streaming is going to come up. People are going to be able to binge watch this, and people are going to have these questions. I think they just how many times the Next Generation did things just end, and we never hear about them again.
Right.
And now, and even the creators of that show have come back and said, looking back 30 years, we're kind of like, we should have handled that. We should have answered that. We should have whatever. And I mean, this is how it's always going to be with things. So,
yeah.
Well, all right. I think that will actually do it for us.
That's everything I meant to say. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, solid episode, solid performances all around. Just a couple of little things that we, of course, as both longtime and new fans, love to nitpick. So I hope that everybody who's listening, if you have anything else that you think that we missed or would like to talk about in greater detail, please say so. I know I have not gone back to review all the episodes for comments or anything like that. I apologize. I'll get to it, but I just haven't really had the desire, to be completely honest. But that's going to do it for us on this particular episode. Again, you can find us and follow us anywhere you happen to watch or listen to podcasts. I happen to do it on Spotify. And until next week, guys, take care of yourselves.
Thanks, guys.